Hi everybody, this is Ancient Ale, and here is why I would die for Rashida Jones. Here is why Ann Perkins is the most important character in Parks and Rec. Yes, I genuinely believe this, and before I have people in the comments saying their favourite is April or Andy or Ron or whoever, yes, that is completely valid. Leslie Knope is on a good 10% of the objects in my house. I absolutely adore the show. I started watching it in 2020 when everything had gone to and it got me out of a dark place. All of the characters are very important to me, and there's a lot of reasons why any of them could be, quote, the most important character. But for the purposes of the video, we're going to stick with Anne. When I did start watching the show, something did become incredibly apparent from the very start. And that is that the charming side character, Ann Perkins, is absolutely vital to the show. Without her, not only would the plot not take place, but the dynamics would be completely off. Let's get into it. Parks and Recreation is a sitcom that ran from 2009 to 2015. It follows the day-to-day life of the Parks and Recreation Department in Pawnee, Indiana. Led by the endlessly optimistic and lovable Leslie Knope, played by the equally lovable Amy Poehler, the show has gone down in history as one of the best comedy series of all time. It deserves all the accolades it's won, and like I mentioned earlier, it has been a comfort to so many people, due to its hopeful message, endearing characters, and hilarious plotlines. The first season of the show definitely needed to figure out its groove. I still really like rewatching it, partially because it still has plenty of funny moments, but also because Anne actually gets a lot more screen time and plot in these early episodes than later on in the show's run. I don't know if this was a symptom of getting a bigger cast, or other characters finding their footing and becoming more compelling and therefore getting more screen time, but Anne definitely has less to do in the later seasons, before, spoilers, leaving midway through season 6 with Rob Lowe's Chris Traeger to start a family in Michigan. So she didn't actually stay for the entirety of the 7-season run of the show. And actually, side note, Rashida leaving Parks and Rec was because she was going to write Toy Story 4. And then sadly, she was actually, basically, she felt forced to leave the project, and that is a absolute bummer. And I do wish we could have seen the universe where that all worked out, so I just wanted to put that out there. She did actually leave to do something that could have been so amazing, but sadly that fell through. Anyway. So to get into it in a little bit more detail, Parks and Rec's first episode was originally going to be Ann Perkins dejectedly standing in front of the pit outside of her house, which was used in the show, just not at the very start. The fact that the first shot of the entire show, the very beginning, could have been Anne feels like a missed opportunity. The pit itself was the main plotline of season 1, and Anne was the person who brought it to the Parks Department's attention and encouraged Leslie to do something about it. It would be the inciting incident for the entire show, and would in turn set up dynamics that lasted for the show's run. When you look at Parks and Rec, you have Leslie as the intelligent, funny, cute protagonist, and Anne fits in easily into the dynamic as the straight man, especially when you bring other characters into the mix. Her sensible, deadpan attitude is perfect for deflecting off the other members of the Parks Department and beyond. She is the straight man of the show, and this is established within minutes of the first episode. It could have been established from the very first moment, and obviously it was then moved to later on in the episode, but from her very first scene, she is immediately Leslie's foil. She is immediately the straight man in basically a room full of, at that point, kind of outlines of who would become more detailed characters. But, you know, especially in the early episodes, Leslie and Tom in particular were kind of, you know, they weren't fully formed yet. They were funny, but there wasn't enough nitty-gritty to them, you know? But it did feel like Anne basically walked into the show fully formed as her straight man persona. So what does that mean? Well, Wikipedia defines the straight man as somebody also known as comedic foil, a stock character in a comedy performance, especially a double act, sketch, comedy or farce. When a comedy partner behaves eccentrically, the straight man is expected to maintain composure. The straight man is a foil, a contrasting character to the funny man. The direct contribution to the comedy a straight man provides typically comes in the form of a deadpan. I'm explaining all this because Ann Perkins was the original foil in Parks and Rec. She basically, as I said, walked into the show not only fully formed as a character, but also immediately her role in the show was there with very little being changed later on. The original foil, more on who took over that later. But when you look at the story beats in the majority of the early episodes, Ann's role in an episode is to counteract Leslie's usually bizarre plans to better the city of Pawnee. Many of her schemes, such as questionable canvassing in episode 2, or literally pretending to be a gay couple with Ann in episode 5, had to be questioned by Ann, who acted as the comedic foil, or straight man, for Leslie. She was the foil for Andy as well, who viewers will recall in season 1 was her boyfriend, so a lot of their dynamic revolved around Andy being quirky or ridiculous, compared to Ann, who was very irritated by this. It was rare throughout the show that Ann got a plotline that went far beyond the role of the foil. When she decided she wanted to date lots of people after Andy, she went on questionable dates, getting hit on by legendary character the douche in my personal favourite episode, The Fight, in season 3. And then when she decided she wanted to have a baby, it opened up plenty of potential storylines there, but all of them seemed to end with Ann having to reason with either Leslie or Chris. Not many of the episodes involved Ann being more than the foil, and Rashida Jones, to her absolute credit, took on her role as the foil perfectly. She was hilarious and heartwarming as this character, and even though she wasn't given a lot to do, she worked with it. And a lot of the dynamic with Leslie in particular was incredible, absolutely no notes. Of course, it goes without saying that Leslie underwent a lot of character growth, especially from season 2 to season 3 of the show. We all know this already, but she was originally written as a pseudo Michael Scott character, before the writers thankfully realised that she was destined to be more headstrong and emotionally intelligent than him. Thank God for that. And as Leslie grew and changed after season 1, Ann's role as the foil decreased, thankfully. And although it did decrease, she was still the foil, but it left some room for her to do a little bit more. For example, did you know that when Rashida was cast in the show, she was told she was the main character? And then when she found out Amy had also been cast, the pair of them assumed that Amy had taken Rashida's role. Thankfully, legendary writer Mike Schur was quick to clear up the confusion and confirm that no, both of them were cast in the show and they would be playing best friends. Which was great news for Amy and Rashida, who were already very close friends and remain so to this day. And if Ann wasn't fully able to progress on her own as a character, she excelled in being Leslie's best friend. So many of my favourite moments in the show revolve around these two and how close they are. It just shows that Parks and Rec wasn't about local government or even comedy. The priority, in the later seasons at least, was the heart. And the fact that they got some incredible jokes in there was just the icing on the rink. One of my favourite moments of Ann and Leslie's friendship comes when Ann gets to inform Leslie that she has been a steamroller for their entire friendship. It was a turning point in the show. It forced Leslie to reevaluate her relationship with not only Ann, but also Ben. And as we know, the two would go on to marry, which might not have happened if Ann hadn't have put her foot down and ordered Leslie to face the fact that she needed to change. The show did not shy away from petty arguments, some of which caused some incredible television, and others which seemed a little unnecessary or forced in the 2026 lens, but the fact remains that Ann and Leslie's friendship was a vital part of the show. It was realistic, it was heartwarming, it was funny. It was incredibly important, and a lot of the time you watch a TV show and you're thinking, this friendship is not as good as Leslie and Ann. Or at least I do anyway. That is, unless you look at it another way. Yes, it can be said that the friendship between Leslie and Ann can be read in a way that is romantic. And listen, I'm a firm believer in interpretation. I love Leslie and Ben and Ann and Chris. You know, it's okay to read it that way. I know for a fact that a lot of queer people can see themselves in the female characters in the show. You have Leslie, who finds her feet a little later in life but ends up thriving in her newfound confidence. You've got April, who is so incredibly herself in such a way that is comforting to those who maybe feel a little bit different. And then there's Ann. She's sweet. She perhaps has struggled to find herself outside of a relationship with a man. And perhaps if the writers had decided to take that down the queer route, I know that a lot of people would have really loved that and related to it. I, for one, know plenty of people who could relate to the idea of discovering their sexuality in their 30s after years of failed relationships. And perhaps part of that was always there. I'm not denying the perfect friendship between Leslie and Ann, but, you know, there's definitely something else going on. I have to wonder what the world would be like if they had been the main couple in the show. Let's be real, it probably would have been cancelled after 2 seasons because TV networks are incredibly predictable in that way. But no, I love Leslie and Ben, but once in a while, I do like to watch some of the episodes under the lens of there being a secret queer relationship there. It would have been great, in all honesty, and we know for a fact that the two of them would have probably really leaned into it. And in fact, they've made jokes implying that, you know, Leslie was in love with Ann, and maybe she was. Maybe she was. I just wish that we could have seen that. I actually do. I really do. The fact that Ann is a person that people can headcanon as queer, and it make perfect sense, is just another reason why she works as a character. People have seen themselves in her, and it shows that she's more than deserving of her spot in the show. And now I might need to watch some Leslie and Ann edits on TikTok before I carry on this video. Rashida Jones is an incredible actress, having starred in many roles over the years, including Karen Filippelli in The Office, obviously, Alva in the absolutely outstanding Christmas film Klaus, if you've not seen it, check it out, and more recently, a heartbreaking role as Amanda in Black Mirror's Season 7 episode Common People. I touched on this earlier, but in the early development stages of Parks, it was believed that there would be one main female lead, leading to the confusion between Poehler and Jones over who that person would be. At one stage, it was actually meant to be Karen from The Office, and Parks was nothing more than a sequel show. Thankfully, that idea was shelved, Amy Poehler was brought on, and we ended up getting Leslie and Ann together. And their dynamic is so beautiful, because they are friends in real life. But the fact is that Rashida has such a unique tone to her acting, and I love it. So much of the humour from Ann comes from her reactions to the other characters, her micro-expressions, her words of retaliation, and how she is unwillingly dragged into the drama of the episode. This is her role as the foil, of course, but Rashida really took this idea and ran with it. There are so many examples where a joke will land, not just because of the person delivering it, but because the camera will cut to Ann and she will pull an expression so amusing that the whole thing is tied together perfectly. Half the joke comes from how it's received from the other characters, and a lot of the time, it feels like Ann is the only one who realises how utterly bizarre everyone around her actually is. If it had been anyone other than Rashida Jones, I wonder if the character would have worked. Her relationship with Leslie is so utterly genuine, but also she is able to perform in such a way that the foil ends up being the reason the joke is funny. Obviously, Parks and Rec wrapped in 2015. The finale actually saw the brief but welcome return of Ann and Chris in a cameo that detailed where they were up to after leaving Pawnee. It was satisfying, Anne and Chris are fine as a couple. I won't begin to imply that I want to mess with my favourite TV show, but that doesn't mean that I don't wish Anne hadn't left. Rashida obviously did leave to do another project that she eventually cut ties with, so that can't be helped. But Leslie needed her Anne. She was the sponge who soaked up all of Leslie's electricity and helped her channel it into something important. Of course, Ben took on the role of the foil as well. And in season 6, when Leslie's at risk of losing her position in City Council, Ben and Anne actually joined forces as the Leslie Knope Emotional Support Task Force. The show knew that Anne and Ben were there to be Leslie's foil, but the difference between them was that Ben became somewhat of an unusual character himself. He slowly shifted from yet another straight man to somebody as kooky as the rest of them. And that's fine. It comes with being in a show for 5 seasons, especially in a comedy where the characters are gonna act a little different to how you would in reality. I want to say that Anne became more than a foil for the other characters. She deserved to be more from a writing perspective, from the lens of Rashida being an incredible actor who realistically wasn't always given enough to do, but also coming from somebody who just really loves Ann Perkins and wanted to be able to see her shine more. Of course she shone, but she deserves a little more. Other than a reunion special that was released in 2020 to raise money for charity, the characters were left when Parks and Rec ended. And I don't really think that the show needs to be revived, despite the fact that I am a huge fan. It ended well, it did its job, and it is fondly remembered. The cast are doing different things now, and that's okay. But if anything is taken from this video, aside from the obvious fact that I love both Ann Perkins and Leslie Knope, it's the hope that the next time you sit down to watch an episode, you spend a little longer appreciating Ann Perkins for what she was. The funny, the foil, the friend.